Hello everyone, welcome to Driven Life TV. Welcome to another video. Thank you so much for tuning in today. So today we're going to be reacting to the interview, the famous interview from I think 3 years ago that Candace Owens did with Professor Mark Lamont Hill. And they discussed so many issues, but I think for me, I'm going to react to two issues. The time when they were talking about affirmative action and diversity in colleges and universities. And then they also talked about the issue of gender pronouns. So I want us to react to those two. Let's get into it.
Argument that you're saying is that the reason that you have these policies is because you think they benefit from diversity by having a certain quota.
Yeah, we all benefit
Right.
from diversity.
So then do you think, why are you okay with HBCUs?
Right. But, okay, you were asking me if there were a white school that had very few black people,
Yeah.
but the black people were allowed to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying
So
we
don't-
do. They call
so
them
we-
Yale, Harvard, and Princeton. That's my point.
No, but they have quotas.
They don't have quotas. What they have is what they do is they consider race as a factor in admission. And I'm saying similarly, yes, I absolutely think it's
That's
okay.
racist.
No, I'm saying it's racist to consider.
Race, yeah.
So
That's race. That's literally like the definition.
no, it's not the definition.
Yeah,
of it.
it
Considering race is not the definition of racism.
If you're making a decision, right, based on this color of somebody's skin, that is racism.
No, it's not. Making your position, if I'm understanding you correctly, is that even the acknowledgement or consideration of race as a factor in anything is racist.
Yes, I think everything should be merit-based. That's true equality.
And I'm saying no, right? So racism,
Okay.
it becomes racist if I am using race as a factor to discriminate against you, to deny you access to
Well, they do
resources,
that.
to deny you access
They
to
do that to
something.
the Chinese people. That's why they're suing. That's why they keep going to the Supreme Court. They're now actively not allowing Chinese people and Asian kids who work their asses off and just perform better than every other race in America. Sorry, they are at the top of this society for a reason. Asian Americans are being discriminated against because they want more diversity, and there's too many Asians at MIT or too many
Right,
Asians
because-
at Harvard, and they're saying you can't come in. We need to let some black people in, even though your test scores are way higher and you've done more, and that's wrong. That's discrimination. You're discriminating against Asians in favor of black people. That's wrong. It's racism.
It's not discriminatory because again,
Okay.
if the only measures for getting into college were GPA and SAT score, and there were a list of people, right? And I said, you know what, you can't get in even though your score is higher. You'd have an argument. College, when
That's
you
what happens, though.
it's not when you apply for college. Your whole time, what they tell you, you got to be part of this club, you got to be part of this thing, you got to do this, you got to. There's a whole thing that we want. We want a well-rounded student, and there are multiple factors in admissions, right? And the other thing any admissions counselor will tell you is, because they always say, what if they have the exact same numbers and one's black and one's white? There are never two cases that are exactly the same, right? They're always complicated. Admissions decisions are always complicated. They're always a whole array of things. And we make decisions based on fit. We make decisions based on the well-roundedness of a person and also what they contribute to our environment, right? So to that extent, the consideration of race or geographic origin is not something like I wouldn't want all kids from New York in one school, right? So oftentimes if
Okay.
kids are relatively similar and we have no kids from the Midwest and someone from the West Coast, yeah, you might have 2 points
But
higher.
they're not relatively similar. That's what I'm saying. If it was a merit-based system, all of the top schools would have all Asians, and that's why Asians are suing, and they should win. I hope they win because it's racist. We should not be saying you overperform and there's too many of you because Asians have a better culture and they focus on school. They do. I mean, listen, I say
better
this all.
culture?
They do.
Okay. So in this conversation, as it's going on, for me, I think of a few things. Okay, so Candace Owens' argument is that putting quotas in college in terms of which kids get into college and which students don't get into college, maybe putting quotas to say we need this number of black students, we need this number of white students, we need this number of Asian students, and so these quotas that they're putting in place are actually discriminating against other people who actually deserve to be in these colleges based on their grades, based on the qualifications that are there in terms of test scores and the likes. And so Lamont Hill is actually saying no. The only criterion for admitting someone into college is not just grades. There are so many things that you put in place. So I think Candace Owens is really fighting against the issue of affirmative action, where the blacks in America actually fought to have a bigger representations in these high Ivy League colleges, in these Ivy League universities, these top schools, because they felt like the black students were underrepresented. There were not really that many. Okay, most of these schools were filled with whites, and and Asians and people of that nature who are very much school or maybe education oriented. And so the people fought. So after that, you find out colleges are actually making considerations for blacks because they're trying to raise the number of black people in these Ivy League universities. And then what ends up happening is that they're making these considerations to admit. So according to Candace, they're also trying to make the same considerations throughout college, to keep them on that campus, even though they're scoring low marks. And then the next thing you know is that, so it's like, okay, so if you are allowing a black student who has average scores, and then there's an Asian student who has very, very high scores, and all of them are attempting to get into Harvard, maybe, and then someone says, no, we need more black students, so we're going to leave this Asian student and allow this black student to get in, even though the grades are a bit average, but we need more black students. And so that Candace Owens is saying is actually racism as well. Only that it's not against the blacks, it's actually against the Asian. So, but Lamont Hill is saying, no, admissions are not just that simple to say we just use test scores. So I also get his argument, because imagine going to a university where there's actually a particular group of people only, predominantly, and then there are few people of a certain ilk. I remember when we went to college, to university, due to our courses, the courses that were there at college, all of them were engineering. And so you find that the school even tried to make sure that there were more females on campus as well, because they saw that for engineering, females were very few in maybe comparing to males. It just happens like that because most females don't go for such programs, and there's nothing wrong with that as well. And so they started to introduce more programs that more females could actually attempt to go for. And so just to make sure they balance up the numbers. That is also sort of a quota as well. We're meeting a quota. We've had that as well at secondary school level in Malawi as well, where you find someone from the north. There are good schools in the north, and then you find that them putting quotas to say, okay, you can only have this many northerners. You cannot have more than this. We should allow some people from the south also to be part of this amazing school that is in the north. Otherwise, they're having just access to this other schools only. So what would happen is the students who would normally go to that school in the north are being left out just to accommodate the quota that was put in place. And so all these things, you find that people from the north at that time began to riot, and there were so many demonstrations in the country because of it. It's a very slippery slope when you begin to think about it. So for me, let's listen to the conversation a bit more, then we'll transition to gender pronouns. But I want us to look at this a bit more. Yes.
And then this is the problem, is that we don't want to acknowledge the fact, and this is the reason why Black America is never, in my opinion, going to get better until we're able to have honest discussions. Every culture is different, right? There are many different cultures going on. Latino culture is different. Asians culture is different.
When you say Asian, who are you talking about?
Okay, so I should be more specific. Yeah, so right now,
there's a bunch of Cambodian Hmong kids that have never seen Camp.
So right now, the if you want to talk about in terms of wealth in America, the wealthiest groups are Pakistani, Taiwanese, not Chinese actually, and I think Japanese, right? And growing up in an environment, I grew up in a very mixed, public school system. One of my best friends who was Japanese, after school at her house, her dad was crazy about schoolwork. I mean, it was like, it didn't happen in my house. Our cultures were different, you know what I mean? It didn't happen in my house, and my cousins, like really, a lot of us, I'm raising my cousins, I'm watching my cousins, because their mom's at work, they're single mother household, so the cousins are becoming the babysitters. Wasn't that way. Her father was so strict about her work. She ended up going to a top school. That made sense based off of how she's worked her entire life, right? To imagine that I didn't end up going to a top school, and for me to say it's because of, color of my skin, or she shouldn't be, no. She worked harder. Asian culture is different. Jewish Americans have a different culture, right? They also are ones that tend to value schoolwork a lot harder. We need to do better in Black America at valuing schoolwork. I wasn't raised in a household that valued schoolwork, and I'm not saying I'm not here to paint a broad brush, but I'm saying overwhelmingly. Okay. There's a reason why we're dropping out of high school at a higher rate.
There are lots of reasons.
But we never talk about what we're doing wrong, and it is culture.
Okay, so I feel like it's very important. For me, I've always thought about this to say, do we want a society that tries to lower standards to accommodate the many, or maybe tries to call people to a higher standard for them to improve their performance, for them to start to have the right types of value systems and literally begin to apply themselves properly in order to actually have the opportunities that they are aspiring for? Because when a system is not merit based, if we are not in a meritocracy, we begin to make the mistake of lowering our standards to accommodate people who are not willing to raise their standard higher, okay, to raise their performance higher, to raise their ambition higher, to raise their vision higher. You understand? So for me, I always ask the question to say, okay, what do we want? Because if we lower our school system to say, okay, from now on, we're going to accommodate these people no matter what they do, the standards should be a bit lower so that more people of this representation can be accommodated. The next thing we know is that we're training people who are not very much capable to actually accomplish the goals that we want to accomplish. Okay, so she gave an example of saying a Japanese friend of hers, and then she was also doing school, but this Japanese friend of hers, once she got home, it was school. The father was strict about education, and then she had to study, but she was not studying. When the Japanese friend goes to an Ivy League school, and she is going to maybe an average school. The next thing you know is that, okay, should she now start complaining that this is actually because of race and not, it's unfair? No, it's merit. That's the beauty about merit. If you also work hard, you actually attain the same results. Okay, for me, I get it. But at the same time, if you're admitting people into college, if you want more diversity in terms of want people from this part of the country, people from this part of the country, that part of the country, and also we want people who have maybe basketball skills, football skills, and things like that. We want a mixture of people so that this place can be like a sort of like a pseudo world where people can be prepared for the actual world. You know what I'm talking about. So what would happen is, I think in that way, then if you're considering other parts of the country, you also make sure that the main criterion for selection should not be lowered too much. So if the GPA is actually something very high, if you want to consider that part and then you see that there are not many people who have scored very high marks, you don't want to go too low as well. Stay a bit close to that. There will always be a few people there. Okay, it doesn't have to be just quota, everything quota. The same thing is happening with companies nowadays. You find that they're having quotas to say we want this number of females, this number of males. The next thing you know is even if the females don't deserve it, even if the males don't deserve it, they're just trying to meet a quota. The next thing you know is that the company is not performing well. Okay, because of that. So do we want systems that have high performance? If we do, then merit is the route. Okay, but when it comes to college admissions, I feel like even the issue of having a mixture of people from different upbringings and backgrounds, different parts of the country, but making sure that the main criterion is not being ignored. Okay, the main criterion is grades. If they are scoring high, don't leave them out. That's the thing. If they're scoring high, don't leave them out. Otherwise, that's not merit at all. Because at school, what matters the most is grades. Okay, even if you have basketball skills, at least score a good mark. That's what should be happening. Okay, so this was a very, very interesting part of the conversation. So I want us to transition to gender pronouns and see what they talk about. Let's go there now.
Systemic, it becomes an agenda, and when you see how vicious that lobby has become, particularly the trans, I've said, like, you had me at the LGB, lost me at the T.
Why the T?
The T, because that's when you started telling people they were bigots because they don't want to play the crazy game. So here's my point. I think
so. This is where now they're having the conversation about the transgender movement and the LGBTQ and the gay stuff and all that. So this is people forcing other people through policy to actually use certain pronouns when calling someone of the opposite sex. For instance, if someone is a man and then they say that I feel like a female and I want you to be calling me by she, so they're trying to force the other person to use their preferred pronouns. So that's the conversation here. Let's listen a little bit.
Trans is a mental disorder. I think there's tons, gender dysphoria is a mental disorder. There's tons of mental disorders out there. There are people that walk around down the street and think they are Superman. They think they have powers and they can fly and they're Batman.
Yeah.
And I would never want to see that person attacked, I grew up in a family where one of my uncles had severe mental disorders and thought he was like Indian from a tribe or something, kind of got it because he was in solitary confinement for too long and he actually went crazy in prison.
Yeah.
So I've always been sensitive to people that have, mental disorders. But when you start saying in society that you now have to pretend that Candace's uncle is an Indian, and if you don't, acknowledge him as Pocahontas, then you're a bigot. that's wrong. Now you're putting the pressure on me
Yeah.
to not just be, accepting of this, but now to play the crazy game and to say, if you mispronounce and you don't call him Chief Pocahontas, then you're a bigot. I don't play that game. I'm like, I'm going to live in reality. You cannot live in reality. You can say how you feel. You can say what you think you see. You can say that you think that, we're on Mars right now, but I'm not going to pretend that I see Mars because it makes you more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So I would, obviously I disagree.
Okay.
And what's interesting is there are people, you say you're with the L and the G and the B. There are people who, 30 years ago would have made the exact same arguments against you for the L, the G, and the B. They would have said that there's scientific data, that these are people who have mental disorders. There's some misalignment between what they desire and what they're supposed to. That there's some kind of gender thing going on that they're confused about. And
Actually, they are.
I think that we have to do a few things. For me, I think the easy part, and this is the part I think you and I agree on, is that we have to accept, and we should accept people as they present themselves in the world, right? Like if someone says if I told you my pronouns were she, her, you would address me as she and her, right?
You're
No,
a dude.
I wouldn't.
Really?
No, I would call you Mark.
Okay,
I'd
but
call
you
you
wouldn't.
Mark.
But you wouldn't call me he.
No, because I would call you Mark. If that was something that made you comfortable. But if I saw you,
And if I said my name was Jane, would you then call me Jane?
if that was your legal name, yes.
But you'd only call me by my legal name.
Yeah, I call you by your legal name. I don't have an issue with that. But I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to change what these established pronouns for male and female because you say I'm Mark and here I am presenting.
What do you? So I really want to ask you. I'm genuinely curious about this.
Okay.
But first, let me just say, I think that one, this isn't a case of someone thinking there's something that they're not. What people are saying is that there is a misalignment between my sex and my gender. But
Disorder.
No,
That's the point. My mind and my body don't match. That's a disorder.
That doesn't make it a disorder. It just means that the world may be more diverse than we've previously understood it to be, whether we see it in plants, whether we see it in animals. There's all kinds of complexity, and we look in history. I mean, even we go back to the continent of Africa, we look in Asia. There's all kinds of examples of people who have complicated gender performances and complicated understandings of gender, and how we perform gender can be different. But I guess my question for you would be, why, if someone identifies as, particularly in someone who you engage with, say it's a colleague at work or whomever, a family member, whomever, if they say, look, I prefer to be called she and her, and I no longer want to be identified by this name, why not just honor that?
If you changed your name, I will honor it.
But why not? I mean, I'm sure you call people by nicknames, dog. I'm sure you grew up in a black neighborhood, right? People, I know you know somebody named Peanut, right?
Yeah.
Right. You don't say, well, that's not your legal name. Your mama named Joe. I'm gonna call you Joe.
No, I'm saying if a name is one thing, but if you're asking me to change pronouns, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Because these are established pronouns. You're asking me to now change the English language, right? We know why we call female she, her, girl, woman. Okay, these are words that have meaning. These are words that have meaning. So this is a book, right? So could you call this is a book and this is a mug? Could you call this a book and call this a mug? Yes, you could do that if you want to change it. But words have meanings, right?
Yes.
So now if I switch it and you say, well, this mug wants to be called a book, it's a mug. It's just a mug. This is the word we've established for mugs. This is the word we've established for books. So you're asking me to change the actual meaning of words to accommodate you. I'm not going to do that.
No,
I'm not going to do that. It is because not only is it a request, you can now get in trouble in certain states.
I'm saying that's not
for misgendering someone.
The request of the trans community is not that I'm actually a man, but I want you to pretend I'm a woman. The argument of the trans community, which I agree with, is no, I am a woman. And so I want you to revert me.
But you're not a woman. So that's the problem. So this is what I say is now you've asked me to take on your mental disorder, right? So I am okay with the fact the argument from my uncle who thinks he's a Native American from a certain tribe is that this is what he thinks. He thinks, but he's not. Okay?
Yes.
So I'm not then to say to me that argument is valid because he thinks it. No, just because you think something doesn't make it real. Okay.
But that's exactly what gender is. Gender is exactly about an experience and a performance and a social construct.
It's not a social
not.
construct. Stop saying a social construct. To say that words don't have meaning and they're socially constructed means nothing. And I'll tell you why.
They are.
But you say that, but then
This wasn't always a book. This could be called mug.
So then what it is? Our entire discussion about Black America meant nothing.
She's about to twist it.
Racial injustice. See what I did there? Because black is a social construct.
Yeah, but we live in a social reality. So within that social
So
reality,
it can't be both, Mark. So you either
Sure it
think
can
that
be.
the gender wage gap is BS,
Mm-hmm.
that feminism is wrong, and that racial disparities are all BS because everything's a social construct. You're either going to go full postmodernist and say nothing is real and it's all made up, or you're going to acknowledge that there are some hard, concrete truths. And our
Exactly.
hard,
Yes.
concrete truths, you and I are black, okay? That's not going to change because we wake up and we decide, you know what, today I'm white and it's just how I feel, and today I'm Chinese. No. You and I are black, okay? We are
Exactly.
acknowledged as black people. We're sitting down as black people. I am a woman. You are a man, okay? Now, if I want to wake up tomorrow and say I'm a man, you want to say you're a woman, and we want to play the crazy game, we can do that. To then say all of society now is to pretend that it was all a social, no, it was a social contract. You were born
No.
a male. I was born a female.
yes, that's a sex.
We are black. Okay, it's a color though. Black is it's a word that we use to
So-
say a sex. Female is a word that we use that has a meaning.
Yeah,
it means
se-
you are born with a vagina. You can have children. You have a uterus. When you are a male, you are born with a penis. You get a woman pregnant. These words have real meanings. We cannot suddenly get into society where there are no truths.
So to acknowledge a social construct does not mean that we ignore biology, and it doesn't mean that we don't have.
Can men get pregnant?
Depends.
This question. Uh-huh.
I know.
What does it depend on?
I know trans men that can get pregnant.
That means it's a woman. Only one sex can get
That's
pregnant.
a circular argument. That's
It's not a
begging the
circular
question.
argument.
Yeah.
It's proving my thing. There is a truth, a concrete truth. You have to be born with a uterus to have a baby. Only women can get pregnant. The fact that we've arrived in a society where
Right, and
this
that's
is
the part
even
I'm disagreeing
debatable.
with. That's the part I'm disagreeing
There's
with.
nothing to disagree with it. These are facts. So you can say that this person who is pregnant identifies as a man. That person was born a woman. I can tell you that every single time because only women can have sex because there are concrete truths about life.
Have babies.
Can have babies, pardon. And that is a hard truth about life. You cannot make that go away because you want to call somebody who has a beard and dresses like a dude a woman. Only if it's pregnant, I can tell you exactly what it is. It's a woman.
So I'll give you. Let's go back to the social construct thing because then it'll answer the thing you just.
Anyways, can continue listening to this because you have to understand that this guy is a professor. This guy is an educated man. He was actually a professor before 35 or something. And he's an educated person. But you have to understand that he's failing to actually articulate basic things in life. This is what happens when you get educated and then you become detached from reality. You begin to question everything and you think that's actually being a deep thinker. This is the problem right here. An educated person actually saying men can get pregnant. What is this? What society are we living in? I don't understand what's going on in the US, I'm telling you. This is crazy. This is crazy. Basic things. Only women get pregnant. Men don't get pregnant. But no, we have to twist it. We have to say these words are constructed by society. Okay, come on, man. It's tiring to Sometimes this is the definition of having people who actually went to school, but they lost their connection to reality. This is what happens when you get educated, but you have no moral compass. This is what happens when you get educated and you don't have Jesus in your life as faith, something to keep you in check, something to keep you anchored in truth as you get this secular knowledge out there. Okay, because when you just start to accept everything and think that that's actually making you relevant in society, that's a problem. You must know there are actually hard, concrete truths in life, and those are what make us have a society. Okay, so it's crazy, but anyways, I hope this was beneficial. We had to react to this. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Until next time, have a good one.